Төртінші лекциямыз, lecture number 4, the title is Classification of Raw Materials. The classification of raw materials divided into three groups. The first group is grain raw materials for food production. Second group is raw materials of animal origin, and the third group is traditional raw material. Food production involves the use of various types of raw materials. At the same time, part of the food industry is engaged in primary processing of raw materials: flour mill, starch, sugar, starch treacle, canning, vegetable drying, alcohol, and the next part is secondary processing of raw materials: bakery, pasta, confectionery, yeast, and others. And the raw materials differ in composition and the properties, which is determined by their further use and a wide range of products that are produced by the food industry. And the raw materials of animal origin, the product of processing by animal or microorganisms. For example, milk, oil, eggs, honey, yeast, and etc. And the main raw material is the raw materials without which is impossible to produce a particular food product in baking flour, water, yeast, and etc. And this is the grain and the seeds and the fruits, water, vegetables. Raw materials of animal origin is milk, meat, fish, oil, and the others. And the additional raw materials are those that are secondary in nature, without which it is impossible to produce food: salt, gelling, foaming, surfactants, food dyes, flavorings, and the acids, as well as eggs and the egg products. Next, about the grain, raw materials for food production. Grain is a main source of human nutrition, feedstock for livestock, and the raw materials for technological production. Their significance is great because of their distinctive properties. This properties is a content of large amount of nutrients, about 58% of the total mass, and the ability of persist under normal conditions for several years with a significant change, and the high transportability and the availability. And the next property is they have a high energy value. And that's according to the chemical composition, cereals are divided into three groups. Grains rich in the starch, for example, cereals, wheat, rye, barley, oats. And the next group is false bread, is the corn, rice, millet, buckwheat, and the grain rich in protein, and the grain is rich in fat. For example, oil crops, sunflower, soybean, castor, linseed, peanut. And the vegetable food products include products of field cultivation, of garden, and the vegetable gardens. Under this group, divided into seven groups. They are root crops, is potatoes, carrots, beets, radish, and horseradish, onion, garlic, and in the heads of others. And the next group is vegetables, is a cabbage, cauliflower, red tomatoes, cucumbers, pumpkin, eggplant, and the green screen onions, garlic, and the others. Third group is the grain, and the grain products is wheat, rye, barley, oats, milk, corn, and etc. Next is cereal, and the cereal products from them. They are potato starch, corn, rice. And next, seed and the stone fruits garden is berries, strawberries, raspberries, currants, and the gooseberries. Next group is melon crops with watermelons, melons, pumpkins, and the squash. And the group number 7 is vegetable, edible oils, and the seeds of oils crops. Wild berries, mulberry, blackberry, cherry, nuts, mushroom, the fresh and the dried groups of mushrooms. And in the next table, you can see the chemical composition of the grain in person. For example, you can see the culture of wheat, the soft wheat, solid wheat, rye, barley, oat, flour, sunflower, soy, rape, peanut, and potato. For example, in the soft wheat, the content of water is 14%. The content of the protein is 11.6. The fat 2.11. Mono and the disaccharide is 1.2. Starch and the dextrins is 53.7. Cellulose 2.4. Ash is 1.7. For example, the high content of the protein in the culture, for example, in soy. The protein, the content of the protein, some soy is 36 to 44%. And the fat, the high content of the fat in the sunflower. The content is from 52 to 56%. And the flour baking is evaluated by organoleptic and the physical chemical methods. For example, humidity, ash content, amount of gluten, acidity, strength of flour, color, and the acid. And during the storage, the acidity of flour increases, which affects the quality of bakery products. Humidity affects the quality of products at all stages. It is limited to falsity by drying to values at which life processes are impossible without violation of user-food properties. Yes? The amount of the gluten is with flour ranges from 20 to 30%. For example, in the highest grade of the flour, the gluten content about to 28%. In the first grade, about 30%. In the second grade, about 25%. And for wallpaper flour, about 20%. And be sure to study grains, legumes, and the oil seeds for their content of toxic metals, pesticides with harmful and mineral admixture. And the next slide, I will talk about the raw materials of animal origin, about the milk. Examination or research of product is intended to prevent food products that have lost their freshness, taste, and nutritional properties, product quality affected by disease and the pests, as well as the products that have toxic properties to the violation of technological conditions at any stage of production and the sale. And to a greater extent, this applies to products of animal origin, where even more stringent examination is carried out to detect infectious disease in slaughter animals, and in milk and the other meat products, and the timely destruction and the disinfection of such raw materials. And for raw materials of animal origin, it is necessary to conduct microbiological studies. When the studying milk, in addition to a certain amount of protein, fat, and acidity, and the physical and chemical properties of milk are determined. For example, in the fresh milk, the intensity of the fresh milk, the freezing point must be 0.51 to 0.59 degrees. And the boiling point at the normal pressure about 100 degrees, and the viscosity and the surface tension and the density must be in normal. And for the production of dairy product, it is necessary to establish the technological properties of milk thermal stability and the suitability for high temperature processing in the production of canned milk, in the production of canned milk and the production of baby food products. And the increased acidity reduces the thermal stability of milk. The technological purpose of milk in the production of fermented milk products depends on the content of lactose in the milk. The shelf life of freshly milked milk depends on the bacterial properties, the presence of bodies, immunoglobulins, enzymes, and others in the milk. At 37 degrees, the storage does not exceed about 2 hours. At 30 degrees, about 3 hours. 25 degrees, 5 hours, and at 10 degrees, about 2 days, and 5 degrees, about 3 days. And at 0 degrees, about 4 days. And the mare's milk is similar in composition to woman's milk and has a low acidity, and can be fed to the infants in its entirety. And in the next table, you can see the chemical composition of milk of various animal species in person. For example, I give you the information, the type of animal such cow, goat, sheep, buffalo, deer, camel, horse, donkey, antelope, and the moose. Cow milk we always use, yes, cow milk. And the dry matter in cow milk is about 12.5%, fat 3.8%, proteins, the total protein about 3.3%, lactose 4.7%, minerals 0.7, acidity 17, and the density 29. And there's a high content of the fat in the, you can see the in the deer milk. Yes, about the 22.5%. And there's a high content of the protein in the milk of the deer too, about the 10.3%. And in production, you can meet the defects of the milk. What is a milk defect? Milk defects is when eating hurt with a blue color, blue and blue for mastitis, tuberculosis of the breast, dilution of milk with water, storage of milk with a galvanized container. And sometimes the milk may be excessive yellow. This is a purulent inflammation of the breast, fast-reading impurities when eating food, for example, carrots, bison, and the others. And the medications, tetracycline, bloody other injuries, pyroplasmosis, eating a large number of buttercups, spurge, and horsetail. And the consistent defects. When they diluted with water, showing the improperly frozen milk, malformation of taste, feed medical impurities in the disease of the udder, and the milk obtained from cows with infectious disease that can be transmitted to humans is destroyed. For example, Bell's disease, plague, rabies, anthrax, leukemia, tuberculosis, and the others. And the next about the meat. Meat products are allowed to use healthy animals. It is necessary to know that meat is a skeleton of the animals and is colored depending on the type of animals. Beef, veal, pork, venison, lamb, rabbit, poultry meat, and others. And depending on the fatness of the animals, the meat change in the chemical composition. Meat in the carcass of cattle is equal to from 44 to 68% of the mass. In the sheep, uh, about 50% too. In the pork, about 50% too. The meat consists of muscle, fat, bone, connective and the nerve tissue, and the byproducts include the internal organs, head, udder, meat bone, tail, genitals, and the meat trimmings. And they make up about 20% of the mass of the resulting meat. And the poultry offal is heart, stomach, liver, neck, wings, legs, and the other. And in the next table, in the table number 3, you can see the chemical composition of the meat, of the beef meat, sheep, of pork meat, veal, horse, and the rabbit meat. In the beef meat of the first category, for example, yes, water is content about 70%, the protein about 18%, fat about 10-1%, and the calorie content is 171. In the sheep meat of the first category, water about 65, protein about 16, fat 17, ash 0.8, and calorie content about 225. And the high content of the protein in the meat of horse meat and in the rabbit, about 21.5%. And the high content of the fat in the fat of the pork, about 37.3%. And there are three phases of the meat. They are rigor, maturation, and the deep afterwards. Rigor mortis is after slaughter, the relaxed carcass hardness, so-called post-mortem rigor, persists for 1-2 days. And this depends on the glycogen and the age content in the muscle of the infected animals, glycogen less therefore. The process of rigor mortis slow pH change from the natural to acid because of the breakdown of glycogen and the lactic acid. And after rigor, there must be phase of maturation. Maturation of meat is a process that occurs after the slaughter of animal, leading to an improvement in its taste under the influence of enzymes. And at the temperature of 1-3 degrees, meat maturation is completed within about 15 days. In the 12 degrees, about the 5 days, at the 18 degrees, and about 2 days, and at 29 degrees after a few hours. And next causes is deep afterwards. Active autolysis when meat is stored for a long time. Its smell, taste, and the color change. And here should be distinguished between two phenomena is sunburn and the rotting. Sunburn change is the quality of meat during autolysis, which leads to the loss of the meat's suitability for food purposes. The color of the meat becomes grayer, the smell suffocatingly acid, the consistency is loose, the reaction acidic. And then in the next change, in the rotting meat, decomposition of organic substance under the influence of microflora enzymes, and in the process of rotting proteins, poisons are formed, putrescine, cadaverine, indole, statol, and ammonia, which degrades the quality of meat and makes it unfit for food. And the next raw materials uh, of animal raw materials is egg. In an egg, there are three components: heart, shell, protein, and the yolk. The ratio between the components of chicken eggs: shell about 12%, protein 58%, yolk 30%. And the protein contains 3% quercetin with bacterial properties, and the chicken eggs are divided into dietary and the table eggs, and depending on the weight and divided into three categories. Selected first and the second groups. Dietary eggs cannot be stored for no more than 7 days. Table eggs no more than 1 month, and the next group no more than 44 days. And the next group of raw materials is additional material. Additional material, raw material may be salt, gelling agents, foaming agents, food acids, colorants, and the flavorants. Gelling agents or gelling are given the most common carbohydrate nature of plant origin. For example, agar, fructose, agar-oil, pectin, starch. Agar is obtained from the seaweed, doesn't dissolve in water, but seals well, absorbing about from 4 to 10 amount of water relative to its mass. Agar-oil or black sea is agar is obtained from the Philophora algae grown in the Black Sea. The gel-forming ability of agar-oil is 2 or 3 times lower than that of agar. And next is pectins. Pectins are high molecular polysaccharides present in the soluble or insoluble form in all terrestrial plants and is a number of algae, especially a lot of the pectin in fruits, berries, stems, roots, crops, and the insoluble pectin substance make up a large part of the primary cell walls and the intercellular substances of plants. And the soluble pectin is contained in the cell juice. Next is gelatin. Gelatin, the gelatinous substances are product of denaturation of collagen and the connective tissue protein. Gelatin is obtained by digestion of bones, cartilage, and the tendons. Gelatin is used in the food industry for making the photoemulsions in the microbiology as a medium for cultivation microorganisms as well. Next is from the addition from raw materials is food flavorings. This group conditional divided into the chaff and the sweet. The first ones give the product a taste and the smell of vegetables, spices, herbs, smoked meat, fish, mushroom, and etc. And the typical sweet flavor are vanilla, chocolate, coffee, and all types of fruit flavors. Flavoring are produced in the form of liquids or powder and sometimes like pastes. And the powdered flavorings are most often obtained by microcapsulation, which is mainly carried out by the method of joint spray, drying of solution of liquid flavoring agent and the carrier. Next is additional raw materials is food acids and the carboxyl acids. They are used in the food industry as preservatives and to give foods and dishes a pleasant sour taste. For example, stearic acid, lactic acid, tartaric acid, acetic acid, malic acid, sorbic acid, used in the manufacture of the confectionery products, soft drinks, food concentrates, jams, compotes, and the sauces. And the food dyes added to food products for the purpose of restoration of natural color lost during the processing and storage. And they added for increasing the intensity of natural coloring and coloring colorless products such as the soft drinks, ice cream, confectionery, as well as to give them an attractive appearance and a color diversity. And in our country, officially banned dyes E121, which is a citrus red, and the E123 is amaranth. And the preservative is E240 is formaldehyde, and the science 2005 E216 and the E217 preservatives have also been banned. And for the end, there are control questions, test control questions. These questions for you. You must describe the raw materials of animal origin, give the concept of grain raw materials for food production, and tell about the chemical composition of grain.
Okay.
Our lecture is over. And let me repeat shortly about the lecture. Yes. I talked about the classification of raw materials. Talked about the grain raw materials, raw materials of animal origin, and the additional raw materials. And I showed you the chemical composition of the grain, and I talked about the milk, the chemical composition of various types of animal, and about the defects of milk and meat, chemical composition of various types of animal meats, and about the phases, about the biochemical process occur in the meat after slaughter, and about the eggs shortly and the additional raw materials. Yes, pectins, gelatins, food flavorings, food acids, and the food dyes, and the control questions. And thank you for your attention. If you have question, please ask. Сұрақтарыңыз болса, қойыңыздар. 5 минут уақытымыз бар. Сұрақтарыңыз бар ма, студенттер? Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Түсінікті ғой?
Everything is clear,
Freelance?
yes.
Иә, апай.
Жақсы. Старосталар маған ұмытпаңыздар, иә, бүгін жіберуді, списокты. 75 студент отыр. 11-ші топ. Так, 11-ші топтан 11, 12, 21, сосын
16.
16 түгел отырмыз ба, что-то аз қойсыздар. Список бойынша қарап отырсам.
Қазір апай список беремін сізге.
Міндетті түрде қарап жіберіңіз. Жақсы, қатысқандарыңызға рахмет. You must
Жақсы апай, сау болыңыз.
you may log out from the
Сау болыңыз апай.
Сау болыңыздар.
Сау болыңыз.
Sağ olunuz.
Рахмет, сау болыңыз.
Сау болыңыздар.
Sağ olunuz apay.